Hi guys. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about natural selection. And I want to make sure that we understand the difference between natural selection and artificial selection, which is something that we've already been talking about. So let's kind of do a quick review. Artificial selection is talking about really selective breeding. And we started learning about last week that if we want specific traits in the offspring, we can actually take a look at the parents and choose the parents that have the desired trait that we would like to have. And we could pick those parents, have them mate, and then we can actually determine what the kids are going to look like. And so, for example, if you take a look at, we wanted to make sure that a farmer has big turkeys, they could go ahead and choose the biggest turkeys, the male and the female, and have them mate to go ahead and try to make sure that the kids are also really big. And so that's the idea of artificial selection or selective breeding. We've done that with plants. So here we've been able to go ahead and modify the plants to go ahead and create broccoli and lettuce, cauliflower. We've actually been able to go ahead and look at the offspring and then be able to go ahead and actually create a lot of different plants that way. We're constantly doing artificial selection, and that's, again, really just where humans are going ahead and choosing the desired traits and selecting for the traits. What we're going to be doing is as far as understanding with natural selection is a little bit different. Natural selection is talking about Earth's way or nature's way of being able to select those organisms that are most fit for their environment to go ahead and pass on their genes. And so obviously you can see the comic here that we have this organism right here looking up at the sign and says, survival of the fittest, join the jungle gym today, because if you're strong and you're fit, you're going to survive and you're going to be able to pass on those genes. And that's the whole premise of and the idea of natural selection. So we're going to take a look at a few examples. One example that we're going to be looking at is the peppered moth. And so here you can actually go ahead and see the peppered moth. The peppered moth is just really a moth that has different dark spots on it. So we can see that there's one that's light right here, and it has different dark spots. And before we actually had factories and that type of thing, really the peppered moth, the light variation of it, was most prevalent. There was actually 98% of the peppered moth population was light colored. But then came the Industrial Revolution. And with the Industrial Revolution came a lot of factories, and with those factories came a lot of air pollution. And what they started to see is that when there was more air pollution, it changed the environment. So this is a simulation just so that you could see the difference between the polluted forest and what it would be like for a bird to hunt in a polluted forest versus a non-polluted forest. So obviously the dark one is a polluted forest, and the light colored tree is the non. The black moths, or the black or the dark colored pepper moths, were actually more camouflaged. And so nature would select for those moths to be able to pass on their genes because they're not going to be eaten. And I want to make sure we really just get the understanding that natural selection is nature's way of being able to put pressure on an organism so that the organisms that have the phenotype that's most fit for that environment will be able to go ahead and pass on those genes. And so here you can see that these green beetles are super yummy and super tasty to this particular predator, this bird, and so they tend to eat the green beetles, leaving the lovely brown beetles left to go ahead and repopulate. And so many generations later, we would start to see a shift in the population as to which would be most prevalent or which would be most around, because they were able to pass on their genes. And so I want to make sure we understand the difference between artificial selection and natural selection. Remember, artificial selection, humans choose the mates. So I want to make sure we understand that, for example, we have the fainting goat. The reason why the fainting goat population is around is because of the fact that it's favorable for us as humans. The reason why people went ahead and started to selectively produce this population of fainting goats or myotonic goats is because when they were with the sheep or the lambs, if they got startled or scared, they would fall over, and the wolves would be able to go ahead and, or predators would be able to go ahead and get the fainting goats and save the sheep. So many farmers specifically tried to have the fainting goats for that reason, so that they could go ahead and protect their livestock. And that's why we have so many different types of organisms. The same thing with many of the animals, the dogs that we have around. The reason they're around is because we've selectively mated them and chose them for their traits. That they wouldn't necessarily be there wouldn't necessarily be all the different subspecies or different versions of dogs around if we hadn't actually just let nature take its course. And so I want to make sure we understand the difference that when humans start to go ahead and be involved and start going ahead and specifically choosing organisms to mate, we're able to control the traits that are passed on. But that doesn't necessarily happen in nature. And so there's definitely a big difference between artificial selection and natural selection. We're going to go ahead and start trying to apply this idea of artificial selection and natural selection in the classroom. So make sure you know the difference between the two. If you happen to have any questions, be sure to go ahead and ask in class because we're going to start trying to apply this idea of natural selection to our walking sticks. I'll see you in class tomorrow.